Jordan Love. You go 15, 16 years of Brett Favre, another 18 years of Aaron Rodgers, and to do what he did opening when all the eyes are on him, he stood up, he showed.
He looked comfortable with rookie tight ends. Romeo Doubs on the road as an underdog.
You come to Chicago, you throw for 3 touchdowns, you are beyond poised. How would you assess your performance today?
Came out and did what we needed to do and showed the world what we're about. So.
You know, you guys, here on my channel, I don't think I've ever made back-to-back videos talking about the same team. But out of everything we saw, we heard, and we expected to actually see out of the Green Bay Packers once we finally hit the regular season, this was literally the last thing I could have anticipated to see. And yes, while I do know that some of you out there are going to make the case that it is just one game, but aside from just the final score, there seems to be a couple of things that we saw within Green Bay's play this week, especially from this guy, that has a ton of people out there thinking, myself included, that this dominant performance that we saw isn't just gonna be a one-time thing. But before we get into that, today's video is brought to you by our friends at DRAFTKINGS. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time. The NFL season is finally here, and to make the most of it, we're partnering up with our friends over at DraftKings Sportsbook to get everyone in on the action. Because for any new customers who download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use promo code DIGEST and bet just $5 on any wager, will receive $200 in bonus bets instantly. And you can use these bonus bets to get even further in on the action with some of DraftKings same game parlays, where you combine multiple bets from the same game for a shot at bigger winnings. And if sports betting isn't available in your state yet, you can still get in on the action with the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app. So once again, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use promo code DIGEST, and bet just $5 on any wager to receive your $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code DIGEST only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official partner of the NFL. Okay, so to get back on topic with the Green Bay Packers, I feel pretty confident, at least when I say this, but it feels like we have never seen a wider range of predictions across the board for such a young and inexperienced team as we saw with Green Bay going into this season. I mean, you guys have seen this right alongside me. It's progressed all the way from odds makers believing they'd barely scratch 6 wins when we found out that this guy was taking over, to all of a sudden, from what we saw in the preseason from these guys, they were a playoff contender to some. And while again, since it's just 1 week, I won't be the one to call them that surefire playoff team just yet, but if you want to be the one to try to argue against some of the film and especially the numbers, I'll leave you to it. And as we've said in the past, with Green Bay also retaining some of the other key aspects of this team, like their arguable top 5 rushing attack or even their highly hopeful defensive presence, and while if you ask me, I don't think either of these aspects could have made a bigger statement out of the gate on top of this, it's just insane that the most raw and inexperienced aspect of this entire team was easily what shined the brightest. Now, heading into this Week 1 matchup for Green Bay, it felt safe to say that there was sort of a very consistent report and feel to everything that we had seen out of Jordan Love prior to this. And to put it simply, that report was inconsistency. And it's not just me saying that either, because even Jordan Love and the coaching staff constantly mentioned this throughout the last couple of weeks, and it was also clear from time to time through the film as well. But when you compare that film to this film, I mean, it's like we're watching a 5-year vet. But regarding some of the biggest positives that we had seen within Love's play over the past couple of weeks, well, they jumped to a completely new level for 60 straight minutes. For example, what stood out the most to me from everything seen out of Jordan Love in the past has undeniably been his poise and pocket awareness. Now, to show that in the preseason and then translate it over to the regular season, that's typically a very different conversation for some, but considering Jordan Love currently has the best quarterback rating across the entire league at this point, I don't think that's the case for him. I mean, you see it in the film. He continually made the correct reads. His touch on a number of passes were picture perfect to just about the highest degree possible, and even aside from how calm, cool, and collected he looked throughout the course of this game and his patience to never really put the ball in harm's way, it's also definitely not as if he wasn't taking those risks that you'd like to see out of a quarterback, because in fact, he's actually one of the more aggressive quarterbacks in the entire league at this point when you take a look at the numbers. And yes, even though some people out there love to emphasize the point that this definitely wasn't a perfect performance by any means, that still doesn't mean it wasn't an exceptional performance in terms of Jordan Love playing error-free, efficient football. But what if I told you, aside from what Jordan Love has showed us, that there is still a massive underlying point to Green Bay's air attack that not many people have seemed to realize yet? Now, if you take a look from the outside at Green Bay's pass presence as a whole, it's definitely one of the more interesting situations in all of football. And with having far and away the youngest receiving core in the entire league, and not to mention them putting up the show that they just did without their number one guy, while this aspect of the offense can and definitely will have their own identity, it feels like it's been a long time since we've seen the Green Bay Packers both, one, have this open and extensive of a playbook, and second, feeding both the run and the pass game off of each other to this degree. Now, what exactly do I mean by this? Well, if you've watched the Packers at all in the past, especially under Matt LaFleur, you know that they love to utilize play concepts such as play actions and RPOs more than the average offense does. And sure, while Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon could be the only reasons that you need to have this mindset, but you also need to consider how wide open of looks this is generating for their entire wide receiver core. And you guys know at this point, with everything seen so far out of rookies like Luke Musgrave and Jayden Reed, and of course some of their top guys in Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, they are all more than capable of making a play when they need to. But when your offense is creating big enough windows for these guys to make it seem like it's almost a practice route, that is almost all a quarterback can ask for. And even when you look a little further into it, whether it was using the running backs in the schemes that we just mentioned, or even getting them further involved in the pass game as well, it played a huge role for opening up the field for this team, which of course resulted in a lot of yards after the catch opportunities. But trust me, that's also not saying that Jordan Love is a play action merchant, because he did his fair share of work in shotgun and empty backfield situations as well. Now, am I trying to say that this offense would be completely lost without the run game? No, and I think what we've seen from Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love early on can definitely testify to this, but it's also safe to say that this guy staying healthy is going to be at the top of Green Bay's wish list this season. But even with how much this offense caught the entire NFL world by surprise, what about the defense? Because as it's been said, being a collective unit on this team that, to put it lightly, heavily underperformed last season, especially when you are comparing talent to production. I mean, from the pick six to the constant pocket pressure and even the limiting of the ground game and the air attack in their own respective rights. Again, I know that it's just one game, but if they're able to keep up this pace, they are finally going to live up to their full potential. But between this and everything else that we've seen from this team early on in the season, I'm also extremely curious to hear what you guys have to think. So be sure to let me know in the comments, what was the most surprising thing you saw from either side of the ball out of the Green Bay Packers in this season opener? And if you had to, give me a prediction for what you think Jordan Love's final stat line and this team's record will be at the end of the season. But once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate y'all more than anything, and I will see you guys in the next video.